No woman lasts near the boss. Amara heard the whisper as she walked through the marble corridors of the mansion. The kitchen staff scattered like roaches when light hit them, their eyes wide with something between pity and terror. She didn't slow down. The double doors to Min-jun's office loomed ahead, flanked by two men in black suits. One had a scar running from his eye to his jaw. The other's hand rested on his holstered gun. Neither moved to open the doors. "I'm here for the chef interview," Amara said. Scarface looked her up and down. "You sure about that? Do I look unsure?" He almost smiled. Almost. Then he pushed the door open. The office was darker than the hallway, heavy curtains blocking most of the sunlight. Min-jun sat behind an obsidian desk, perfectly still, perfectly silent. For more men lined the walls like statues. The air smelled of expensive cologne and something metallic, gun oil, maybe. Or blood. Min-jun didn't look up from the document in front of him. His fingers, long and scarred, turned a page with deliberate slowness. Amara stepped forward. I know who you are." His voice was ice scraping glass. Amara Okafor, 28. Trained at Le Cordon Bleu. Worked at 3 restaurants that went bankrupt. Currently $30,000 in debt. Her jaw tightened. The restaurants failed because of bad management, not bad food. Or perhaps your cooking wasn't worth saving them for. Before I tell you what happened next, subscribe to Mystic Tale by Luna and comment where you're watching from. Then why interview me? Min-jun finally looked up. His eyes were black, bottomless, the kind that had seen too much death to fear it anymore. Because desperate people make obedient employees. "I'm not obedient." One of the men along the wall shifted. Min-jun raised a hand slightly and the movement stopped. "You're in debt to loan sharks," Min-jun continued. "They'll break your fingers soon. Perhaps your legs. Then you'll never cook again." He leaned back in his chair. "I'm offering you a way out. What do you want?" "A personal chef. Someone to prepare all my meals. You'll live here. No days off. No visitors. No leaving the property without permission." Sounds like prison. Prison doesn't pay $50,000 a month. The number hit her like a fist. 50,000. She could clear her debt in a year. Maybe less. "Why so much?" she asked. "Because everyone who's worked for me either quits or dies." Min-jun picked up a teacup from his desk, steam still rising from it. "The question is which category you'll fall into." He pushed the cup toward her across the desk. It slid fast, too fast, and tipped at the edge. Scalding tea splashed across his hand. Amara moved without thinking. She grabbed his wrist, yanking it back, pressing her scarf against his skin to absorb the heat. The fabric darkened immediately, soaking up the liquid. Every gun in the room cocked at once. The sound punched through the silence, like thunder. Amara froze, her hand still wrapped around Min-jun's wrist, his pulse hammering against her palm. She looked up. Min-jun stared at her, his expression unreadable. The men behind him had their weapons aimed at her head. Scarface's finger was already on the trigger. "Boss," one of them said, voice tight. "She touched you." No one moved. No one breathed. Min-jun's gaze dropped to where her fingers pressed against his skin. Seconds stretched into eternities. Then he spoke, his voice quieter than before, almost curious. "You're hired." Amara blinked. "What?" "Be in the kitchen tomorrow at 5 a.m. He pulled his hand away slowly, deliberately. "If you're late, you're dead." The mansion's kitchen was larger than her entire apartment had been. Marble countertops. Industrial-grade appliances. A walk-in freezer that could store a month's worth of supplies. Everything gleamed, sterile and untouched, like a museum exhibit. An older woman with gray streaks in her hair was wiping down the counters when Amara entered. She looked up, and her face went pale. "You're the new chef?" "Apparently." The woman set down her cloth, her movements careful. "I'm Mrs. Kwan. I manage the household staff." She glanced toward the door, then lowered her voice. "Listen carefully. The boss doesn't speak during meals. He doesn't compliment. He doesn't complain. If he finishes the plate, you're safe. If he doesn't, pack your things. And if he gets sick, then pray you die before his men find you. Mrs. Kwan left without another word. Amara spent the rest of the day learning the kitchen's layout, checking inventory, planning menus. When she opened the fridge, she found nothing but raw meat, vegetables, and imported water. No spices. No sauce. No flavor. She'd fix that tomorrow. At midnight, she lay in her assigned room, small, windowless, with a bed and a lamp. The door had no lock on the inside. She stared at the ceiling and wondered what the hell she'd gotten herself into. 5 a.m. came too fast. She prepared breakfast with precision. Ganjang-gajang, soy-marinated crab, with steamed rice and banchan. Traditional Korean elevated. She'd done her research on Min-jun. Born in Busan. Raised in the Mafia. Ruthless. Cold. Untouchable. She set the tray on the dining table in his private quarters. Min-jun entered at exactly 5:45, dressed in a black suit despite the early hour. He sat without acknowledgement, picked up his chopsticks, and began eating. Amara stood in the corner, hands clasped behind her back, watching. He ate like a man preparing for execution, methodical, joyless, as if food were fuel and nothing more. He didn't look at her once, didn't pause, didn't react. When he finished, he stood and walked out. The plate was empty. Days blurred together. Min-jun summoned her at random hours. 3 a.m. for Mayakguk, 10 p.m. for Samgyeopsal, noon for something she'd never heard of. He tested her constantly, watching for weakness, waiting for failure. She never gave him either. "You eat like a man preparing for execution," she said one evening as she set down his dinner. His eyes flicked to her. Cold. Unblinking. "Maybe I am." Then he ate in silence. The other staff avoided her. She'd catch them whispering in the hallways, their conversations dying the moment she approached. Once, she overheard 2 guards talking near the kitchen. She touched him twice now. The teacup, and when she served that soup. "He'll kill her soon. He always does. She's different. He keeps her close. That's worse." Amara pretended not to hear. But she noticed things. Small things. Min-jun always finished her spicy jollof rice, even though Korean palates usually rejected bold African flavors. His shoulders relaxed slightly when she hummed while cooking. Once, she caught him watching her chop vegetables, his expression almost curious. 3 weeks in, Jae-ho cornered her outside the kitchen. He was Min-jun's second-in-command, older, graying, with eyes that had seen too many betrayals to trust easily. "You're playing a dangerous game," he said. "I'm just cooking. No woman gets this close to the boss. Not anymore." "Why not?" Jae-ho's jaw tightened. His mother poisoned his father through the food she prepared. He watched him die choking on her kimchi jjigae. He was 8 years old. Amara's stomach dropped. "So when you touch him," Jae-ho continued, "when you stand too close, when you make him comfortable, you're breaking rules written in blood. The boss doesn't keep women. He doesn't trust them. And he sure as hell doesn't let them live after touching him." "Then why am I still here?" Jae-ho studied her for a long moment. "That's what worries me." He walked away, leaving her alone in the hallway. That night, Amara couldn't sleep. She went to the kitchen for water and froze. Blood. Fresh drops on the white tile floor, leading toward the pantry. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She followed the trail, each drop darker than the last. She found Min-jun slumped against the counter, his shirt torn, his side bleeding through a makeshift bandage. His face was pale, his breathing shallow. Their eyes met. "Get out," he growled. Amara didn't move. "I said get out." Instead, she grabbed the first aid kit from the wall and knelt beside him. "You're going to bleed out if I don't help you." "I don't need your help. You can barely stand." His hand shot out, grabbing her wrist hard enough to bruise. "If you touch me again, I'll kill you myself." Amara looked him dead in the eye. "No, you won't." For the first time since she'd met him, Min-jun looked uncertain. She opened the kit. "You're insane." Min-jun's voice was strained, his hand still gripping her wrist. Blood seeped through his fingers where he pressed against the wound. Amara pulled her arm free and opened the antiseptic. Maybe. But you're the one bleeding all over your kitchen floor. This isn't your concern. You're my employer. If you die, I don't get paid. She reached for his shirt, and he flinched back. Not from pain, from proximity. His jaw clenched, muscles taut beneath skin that had gone too pale. I need to see the wound, she said.
No.
Then you'll die of infection instead of blood loss. Your choice. They stared at each other. His eyes were black fire, burning with something between rage and fear. Finally, he released his grip on the wound. Blood flowed faster. Amara didn't hesitate. She lifted his shirt, exposing a deep gash across his ribs. A knife wound, still fresh. She grabbed gauze and pressed it against the cut. Min-jun hissed through his teeth, but didn't pull away. What happened? She asked, working quickly. Rival family. They're getting bold. Bold enough to stab you? Bold enough to think they can. She threaded the needle from the kit, hands steady despite the situation. This is going to hurt. I've had worse. She believed him. His torso was a map of violence, scars crossing scars, old burns, what looked like bullet wounds. Each one a story he'd never tell. The first stitch pierced his skin. He didn't make a sound. You should go to a hospital, Amara said. Hospitals ask questions. And you don't give answers. Now you're learning. She continued stitching, her fingers brushing against his skin with each pass of the needle. His breathing changed, became shallower. Not from pain, from something else. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Multiple pairs. The kitchen door burst open, and 3 of Min-jun's men stormed in, guns drawn. Jae-ho led them, his face twisted with alarm. Then they saw Amara kneeling beside Min-jun, her hands on his bare chest. Every weapon aimed at her head. Step away from him, Jae-ho commanded. Min-jun's voice cut through the tension. Stand down. Boss, I said stand down. Jae-ho's finger trembled on the trigger. The other men looked between their leader and their second-in-command, uncertain. The moment stretched thin enough to snap. Now, Min-jun added, his tone dropping to something lethal. Slowly, the guns lowered. But the men didn't leave. They watched, horrified, as Amara finished the last stitch. She tied off the thread and covered the wound with clean bandages. Her palms rested flat against his ribs, feeling his heartbeat. Rapid, unsteady. The second forbidden touch. Done, she said quietly. Min-jun looked down at her hands on his skin. Then at his men. Then back at her. Leave us, he told them. Jae-ho's eyes widened. Boss.
Out.
They retreated like dogs kicked by their master, but Amara saw them pause just outside the door. Listening. Always listening. She pulled her hands away and began cleaning up the medical supplies. Min-jun adjusted his shirt carefully, his movements stiff. Why did you touch me? He asked. The question hung in the air between them. Amara met his gaze. Because no one else would. They don't touch me because they value their lives. Or because they're afraid of yours. He stood slowly, testing his weight. The bandage held. He walked to the sink, washed the blood from his hands, and stared out the small window above it. Dawn was breaking, painting the sky in shades of gray. My mother used to cook for my father, he said, his voice distant. Every meal. Every day. She'd taste everything first to prove it was safe. He turned to face her. Then one day, she didn't. And he died screaming. Amara's throat tightened. I was 8, Min-jun continued. I watched him claw at his throat, watched the foam on his lips turn red. The doctor said it was botulinum toxin. Undetectable. Untraceable. She'd been building immunity for months. Where is she now?
Dead.
My uncle put a bullet in her brain before she could run. His eyes locked onto hers. So when you ask why I don't let people touch me, why I don't trust anyone near my food, why every woman who's worked here has disappeared, now you know. I'm not her.
No.
You're worse. He stepped closer, and Amara forced herself not to retreat. You're making me forget why I have rules. Before she could respond, he walked out, leaving her alone with the blood-stained tiles and the echo of his confession. By noon, every member of the organization knew what happened. The boss let a woman touch him.
Twice.
Amara felt their eyes everywhere she went. Whispers followed her through hallways. Guards stared openly, their expressions ranging from shock to disgust. One spat on the floor as she passed. Mrs. Kwan found her in the pantry that afternoon, checking inventory. "They're saying you've cursed him," the older woman said, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's superstitious nonsense. In this world, superstition keeps people alive." Mrs. Kwan glanced toward the door. "The Kim family heard about last night. They're calling it weakness. Min-jun's enemies are circling. Because he let me help him? Because he let you live after helping him." Mrs. Kwan's expression softened. "You seem like a good girl. Smart. So I'll tell you what I told the others, run. Tonight. Before this place swallows you whole." But Amara didn't run. That evening, Min-jun summoned her to his office. Jae-ho stood beside the desk, arms crossed, his face carved from stone. "We're hosting a meeting with the Park family tomorrow," Min-jun said, without preamble. 8 people. You'll prepare dinner. What would you like me to make? Impress them. Jae-ho stepped forward. "Boss, is that wise? After last night, having her serve. Are you questioning my judgment?" The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Jae-ho's jaw worked, but he said nothing. Min-jun's gaze returned to Amara. "They'll arrive at 7. Don't embarrass me." "I won't." "And Amara?" He leaned back in his chair. "If anyone tries to poison the food, make sure they die before I do." It might have been a joke. With him, she could never tell. The Park family arrived exactly on time, their convoy of black cars filling the mansion's driveway. Amara watched from the kitchen window as Min-jun greeted them. Cold handshakes, colder smiles. These were dangerous men pretending to be civilized. She'd prepared a feast. Galbi-jjim, godanjeo-gwae, kimchi-jeon, and her own addition, jollof rice with Korean gochugaru for heat. A fusion of her world and his. Risky, but memorable. When she brought out the first course, the room fell silent. 8 men in expensive suits stared at her. Min-jun sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. Jae-ho stood behind him, hand near his weapon. The Park family's leader, a man with silver hair and a scar bisecting his lip, spoke first. "This is your new chef." "Yes," Min-jun replied. "Interesting choice." The man's eyes traveled over Amara slowly, invasively. "Does she do more than cook?" The air pressure changed. Min-jun's fingers stilled on his glass. "Careful, Park. You're in my house. If you do the same thing, subscribe to Mystic Tale by Luna, and tell me where you're watching from." The silver-haired man raised his hands in mock surrender. "Just making conversation." Amara served the food and retreated to the kitchen, but she stayed close to the door, listening. "Your father would be disappointed," Park said after a long silence. "Letting a woman this close. Especially after what your mother did." "My father's dead," Min-jun replied flatly. "His opinions don't concern me, but they concern your men. Half of them think you're going soft. The other half think you're going insane." Park took a bite of the galbi-jjim. "I'm inclined to agree with both." Jae-ho shifted his weight. Amara heard the subtle click of a safety disengaging. "Is that a threat?" Min-jun asked, his voice dangerously calm. "It's an observation. You've spent 20 years building fear. Now you're dismantling it over a woman who can cook." Park set down his chopsticks. "The other families are watching. Some are preparing. Let them prepare. You're making enemies, Min-jun. I've always had enemies. Now I have jollof rice." He took another bite, his eyes never leaving Park's face.
"Try it."
"It's excellent." The meeting ended an hour later without bloodshed. The Park family left, and Amara released a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. She was cleaning the kitchen when Min-jun appeared in the doorway. "They liked your food," he said, "but not your choices." "My choices aren't their concern." He stepped inside, the door closing behind him. "You heard everything." It wasn't a question. "Yes." "And you're still here." "Where else would I go?" He moved closer, and Amara's pulse quickened. He smelled like expensive cologne and gunpowder, a contradiction she was beginning to understand. "They're right," Min-jun said quietly. "You're a liability. Every day you're here, you make me weaker." "Then fire me." "I can't." The admission hung between them, raw and honest. His eyes searched her face like he was trying to solve an equation that had no answer. "Why?" she asked. "Because when I eat your food, I remember what it's like to feel something other than rage." His voice was barely audible. "Because when you touched me, I didn't want to kill you. I wanted—" He stopped himself, jaw clenching. "What did you want?" He didn't answer. Instead, he turned and walked away, leaving her alone in the kitchen with a confession half-spoken. 3 days later, Amara found a folder on her bed. No note, no explanation. Inside were newspaper clippings, police reports, photographs. All about Min-jun's mother. Her name was Yoon Hae-jin. Beautiful, elegant, the perfect Mafia wife. The articles detailed the poisoning, how she'd planned it for 6 months, how she'd been having an affair with a rival family's underboss, how she'd intended to deliver Min-jun's father's territory as a wedding gift. One photograph showed her dead body, slumped in a warehouse. Another showed 8-year-old Min-jun at the funeral, his face blank, his small hands clenched into fists. Amara's chest ached. She understood now. The rules. The distance. The fear beneath the ice. That night, Min-jun summoned her for dinner, just the two of them. He ate in silence while she stood by the wall, watching. "You read the file," he said without looking up. "Yes." "Do you pity me now?"
No.
He glanced at her, surprise flickering across his features. "Pity is for the weak," Amara continued.
You survived.
"That's not pitiable. That's strength. I'm not strong. I'm paranoid." "You're careful. There's a difference." He set down his chopsticks. "You don't understand what you've done by staying here. The Kim family has already sent warnings. The Lee family is asking questions. And my own men." He exhaled sharply. "Jae-ho wants you gone. Others want you dead. What do you want?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. He stood, walked around the table, and stopped in front of her. Too close. Close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes, the barely visible scar on his left cheekbone. "I want to stop thinking about you," he said, his voice rough. "I want to stop waiting for you to poison me. I want to stop feeling like I'm betraying my father every time you smile. I haven't smiled at you once. That's the problem. I keep waiting for it." The confession cracked something open between them. Amara's breath caught. "You're not betraying anyone," she said softly. "You're just living. Living is dangerous. So is hiding." His hand lifted, hovering near her face, but not quite touching. A gulf of inches that might as well have been miles. "You're a coward," she whispered. His eyes flashed. "What did you say?" "You heard me. You're not cold. You're a coward hiding from life." She held his gaze, unflinching. "You've built walls so high you can't see over them anymore. And you call it strength, when really it's just fear." Min-jun's hand dropped to the table beside her, caging her in. His face was inches from hers, fury and something else warring in his expression. "You don't know what you're talking about. Then prove me wrong." The challenge hung in the air, electric and dangerous. His breathing was ragged, his control fraying at the edges. Then he grabbed her face and kissed her. It was fierce, desperate, years of walls crumbling in seconds. His lips crashed against hers with bruising intensity, one hand tangling in her hair, the other gripping her waist. Amara's back hit the wall, and she kissed him back just as hard, tasting anger and hunger and something deeper she couldn't name. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Min-jun's forehead rested against hers, his eyes closed. "This changes nothing," he said, his voice hoarse. But they both knew it changed everything. "The entire compound knows." Jae-ho's voice cut through the morning silence as Amara entered the kitchen. He stood by the counter, arms crossed, his expression carved from granite. She didn't stop walking. "Good morning to you too. This isn't a joke." He moved to block her path. 3 guards saw you leave the boss's quarters at 2 a.m. By sunrise, every family from Seoul to Busan will hear about it. Amara set down her knife bag. I was cooking late. He requested midnight supper. Don't insult my intelligence. Jae-ho's eyes were hard. I've served Min-jun for 15 years. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looked at you last night. Then maybe you should be happy he's finally looking at something other than ghosts. Happiness gets people killed in our world. She began pulling ingredients from the fridge: mackerel, gochujang, sesame oil. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, but her mind raced. The kiss had been reckless. Dangerous. Everything she should regret. She didn't. The Kim family sent a message this morning. Jae-ho continued. They're calling Min-jun the soft boss. The Park family is negotiating with the Choi Syndicate. Even our own men are questioning his judgment. Because he kissed me? Because he's breaking the one rule that's kept him alive. Jae-ho's voice dropped. No women. No trust. No weakness. That's how he survived his mother's betrayal. That's how he built an empire. Maybe the empire isn't worth it if you have to live like a corpse. The slap came fast. Not hard enough to hurt, but sharp enough to sting. Amara's head snapped to the side, and when she looked back, Jae-ho's hand was trembling. You don't understand what you're destroying, he said, his voice cracking slightly. I watched that boy grow up drowning in blood and betrayal. I taught him how to survive. And now he stopped himself, jaw working. He'll die because of you. And I'll have to bury him like I buried his father. Before Amara could respond, the kitchen door opened. Min-jun stood in the entrance, his presence filling the space like a storm front. His eyes moved from Jae-ho to the red mark on Amara's cheek. The temperature plummeted. Did you touch her? Min-jun's voice was silk over razors. Jae-ho straightened. Boss, Answer the question. She needs to understand the danger she's putting you in. Min-jun crossed the room in 3 strides and grabbed Jae-ho by the throat, slamming him against the refrigerator. The older man didn't resist, didn't fight back, just met his boss's eyes with something like resignation. You've been with me since the beginning, Min-jun said quietly, each word precise. That's the only reason you're still breathing. But if you touch her again, Jae-ho, I'll forget every debt I owe you. He released his grip. Jae-ho coughed, rubbing his neck, but his gaze remained steady. She's your weakness, Jae-ho rasped. And your enemies see it. Then let them come. They already are. Min-jun's expression didn't change, but Amara saw the subtle shift in his posture, shoulders tensing, fingers flexing. The predator recognizing a threat. Leave us, he said. Jae-ho limped toward the door, pausing at the threshold. I'm trying to save you, Min-jun. Even if you won't save yourself. When they were alone, Min-jun turned to Amara. He reached up slowly, his fingers hovering near the red mark on her face, but not quite touching. Are you hurt? I've had worse. That's not what I asked. She met his eyes. I'm fine. He pulled his hand back, creating distance between them again. The kiss might as well have happened in another lifetime. His mask was back in place, cold, controlled, unreachable. This was a mistake, he said. Amara's chest tightened. Which part? All of it. Hiring you. Letting you stay. Last night. He turned away, staring out the small kitchen window. You should leave. Tonight. I'll clear your debt and give you enough money to start over somewhere else. I'm not leaving. This isn't a request. And I'm not one of your soldiers. She stepped closer. You don't get to kiss me and then pretend it didn't happen. You don't get to push me away because you're scared. He spun around, anger flashing across his features. Scared? You think I'm scared? I think you're terrified. She held her ground. I think you've been terrified since you were 8 years old, watching your father die. And instead of healing, you built walls and called it strength. Those walls kept me alive. They kept you alone. Her voice softened. There's a difference. Min-jun's jaw clenched. For a moment, she thought he might grab her again, kiss her or kill her. With him, the line was razor thin. Instead, he spoke, his voice hollow. My mother didn't just poison the food. She tasted it first. Every meal, every dish. She'd smile and take a bite, and my father would relax, thinking he was safe. His hands curled into fists. She'd been building immunity for months. Small doses of toxin, gradually increasing. By the time she served the fatal meal, her body could handle what would kill a normal person. Amara's breath caught. I watched him convulse on the floor. Min-jun continued, his eyes distant. Watched the foam turn his lips white, then pink, then red. She just stood there, watching. And I remember thinking, she made this. She put love on a plate and served it with death. I'm not her. Everyone says that. He finally looked at her. But how do I know? How do I trust you when trust killed my father? You can't. The admission was painful but true. Trust isn't something you know. It's something you choose. And you've chosen fear for 20 years. Fear keeps me breathing. Fear keeps you from living. The words hung between them, a chasm neither could cross. Min-jun's expression shifted through emotions too fast to name. Anger, longing, desperation. I can't protect you and run an empire, he said finally. They'll use you to destroy me. Then don't protect me. Teach me to protect myself. This isn't your world. It is now. He stared at her, searching for something, doubt, maybe, or self-preservation. He found neither. Instead, he closed the distance between them, his hand cupping her face with surprising gentleness. You're going to get us both killed, he whispered. Probably. He almost smiled. Almost. Then his phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He checked the screen, and his expression hardened. The Leaf family is moving into our territory. I have to handle this. When will you be back? Late. He hesitated at the door. Stay inside the compound. Don't go near the gates. And Amara? His eyes locked onto hers. If something happens to me, run. Don't wait. Don't look back. Just run. Then he was gone. The day crawled by. Amara prepared meals on autopilot, her mind replaying Min-jun's words. Trust killed my father. How did you argue with that? How did you convince someone to open up when opening up had cost them everything? Mrs. Kwan found her in the pantry that afternoon, organizing spices. You're still here, the older woman said, surprise evident in her voice. Where else would I be? Smart women leave before the storm hits. Mrs. Kwan glanced around nervously. The staff is talking. They say the boss is compromised. That rival families are planning something. Let them plan. Child, you don't understand. Mrs. Kwan moved closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. I've worked in this house for 23 years. I knew Min-jun's mother. Beautiful woman. Kind, or so we thought. She'd cook with me, laugh, talk about her son. And the whole time, she was preparing to murder her husband. Amara's hands stilled on a jar of cumin. The day it happened, she made his favorite, kimchi jjigae with pork belly. I watched her prepare it, tasted it myself when she offered. It was delicious. Mrs. Kwan's eyes glistened. 2 hours later, he was dead and she was running. Min-jun found her before his uncle did. He was just a boy holding his father's gun, asking her why. She laughed, said love was for the weak. Have you ever felt this? Comment your experience and where you're watching from. What did Min-jun do? Nothing. He just stood there while his uncle put a bullet in her head.
Didn't cry.
Didn't scream. He was 8 years old, and he just turned off. Mrs. Kwan touched Amara's arm gently. You're trying to turn him back on. But some things stay broken, child. No matter how much you care. That night, Amara lay in bed, unable to sleep. The compound was too quiet. No footsteps in the hallways. No guards changing shifts. Just silence, thick and oppressive. At 2 a.m., her door opened. She sat up, reaching for the knife she'd started keeping under her pillow. But it was only Min-jun, still in his blood-spattered suit, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. You're hurt, she said, spotting the fresh bruise on his jaw. It's handled. He sat on the edge of her bed, and the mattress dipped under his weight. The Leaf family won't be a problem anymore. She didn't ask what that meant. She didn't want to know. You should rest, she said. I can't. He turned to look at her, and in the dim light, he looked younger. Vulnerable. Every time I close my eyes, I see her. My mother. Standing over my father's body. Smiling. Amara reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away. He didn't. Her hand covered his, and he stared at their joined fingers like they were something foreign. She chose evil, Amara said quietly. That's her burden, not yours. Her blood runs in my veins. So does your father's. So does every choice you've made since then. She squeezed his hand. You're not her, Min-jun. You're the boy who survived her. The man who built something from ashes. I built it with violence. Because that's all you knew. But you can learn something else. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. The gesture was achingly tender, so at odds with the blood on his clothes and the death in his eyes. I'm trying, he whispered. With you, I'm trying. Before she could respond, his phone rang. He checked it, and his expression went cold. What's wrong? He stood abruptly. Kim family is hitting our warehouse on the east side. I have to go.
Now?
It's 3 a.m. War doesn't wait for daylight. He moved toward the door, then paused. Lock this door after I leave. Don't open it for anyone except me or Jae-ho. Min-jun. Promise me. The urgency in his voice made her nod. I promise. He left, and she heard the lock click from the outside. She stared at the door, unease coiling in her stomach. Something was wrong. Morning came without Min-jun's return. Amara tried his phone repeatedly. No answer. Jae-ho was unreachable. The compound felt emptier than usual, guards stationed at unusual positions. She was preparing breakfast when the kitchen door burst open. Four men she'd never seen before stormed in, weapons drawn. Don't scream, the leader said, his smile cruel. This'll be easier if you cooperate. Amara's hand closed around the knife on the counter.
Who are you?
Kim family sends their regards. He gestured, and 2 men moved forward. Your boyfriend's made powerful enemies. Time for him to learn what happens when you get soft. She lunged with the knife, catching one guard across the arm. He howled, stumbling back, but the other grabbed her from behind. The blade clattered to the floor. She fought, kicking, biting, scratching, but there were too many of them. A cloth covered her mouth and nose. Chemical sweetness flooded her senses. The kitchen blurred, tilted, and darkness swallowed her whole. When she woke, she was bound to a chair in what looked like an abandoned warehouse. Concrete floors, rusted metal beams, the smell of oil and decay. The Kim family's leader, a man with a gold tooth and dead eyes, sat across from her, smoking a cigarette. Welcome back, he said pleasantly. I'm Kim Tae-sung. And you, my dear, are going to help me kill Min-jun. Amara's wrists burned against the rope. He'll come for me. I'm counting on it. Tae-sung exhaled smoke. The great Min-jun, brought low by a woman. Again, it's almost poetic. He leaned forward. His mother's betrayal broke him. But you? You'll be what finally destroys him. You don't know him. I know enough. I know he's been slipping, missing meetings, making reckless decisions. All because of you. Tae-sung stubbed out his cigarette on the arm of her chair. When he walks through that door to save you, my men will cut him down. And I'll make sure you watch. He won't come alone. Oh, I hope he brings everyone. Tae-sung's smile widened. It'll be a massacre. His whole organization, wiped out because he couldn't resist playing hero for his pet chef. Footsteps echoed through the warehouse. A guard approached, whispering urgently in Tae-sung's ear. The man's expression shifted from confidence to alarm. What do you mean he's already here? The warehouse lights exploded. Gunfire erupted in the darkness. Quick, precise, lethal. Men screamed. Bodies hit the floor with wet thuds. Then silence. A single flashlight clicked on, illuminating Min-jun standing in the doorway. His suit was immaculate. His gun steady. His eyes were the coldest thing Amara had ever seen. You took something of mine, he said, his voice carrying through the darkness. I'm here to collect. Taesung raised his weapon, but Min-jun was faster. The shot echoed, and Taesung collapsed, clutching his knee. Min-jun crossed the warehouse like death incarnate, stepping over bodies without a glance. He reached Amara and cut her bonds with clinical efficiency. Are you hurt? He asked, his hands checking her for injuries. I'm fine. Good. He pulled her to her feet, keeping his body between her and the remaining threats. Close your eyes. Why? The gunshot was deafening. Taesung's body slumped sideways. I said close your eyes, Min-jun repeated, his voice gentle despite the violence around them. She didn't. She watched as he eliminated every remaining threat, each movement precise and unhesitating. This was the man his enemies feared, not the cold boss, but the monster they'd created. When it was over, he holstered his weapon and took her hand. We're leaving. Outside, dawn was breaking. His men surrounded the building, weapons ready. Jae-ho limped forward, his face bruised but relieved. Boss, we need to move. More Kim family en route. But Min-jun didn't move. He turned to Amara, his hand still holding hers, and in front of all his men, he spoke clearly. Anyone who touches her dies. Anyone who questions her dies. She stays, and that's final. The men exchanged glances. Some nodded. Others looked uncertain. But no one argued. Min-jun pulled Amara closer, his voice dropping so only she could hear. I can't promise to be good. I can't promise to be safe. But I can promise you'll always be protected. I don't need protection. I need you to stop running from this. His eyes searched hers. Then, for the first time since she'd met him, Min-jun smiled. Small, barely visible, but real. Then I'll stop. They're calling it the Warehouse Massacre. Jae-ho set the newspaper on Min-jun's desk, his expression grim. The headline screamed in bold Korean characters, Mafia war escalates, 15 dead. Min-jun didn't look up from the documents he was signing. Let them call it whatever they want. The other families are terrified. Good. Jae-ho crossed his arms. But the Kim survivors are regrouping. Intelligence says they're planning retaliation. Then we'll be ready. Boss. Jae-ho's voice dropped. They're not coming for you. They're coming for her. The pen in Min-jun's hand stilled. He set it down slowly, deliberately, then looked up. His eyes were black ice. Then they'll die slower. Amara appeared in the doorway, carrying a tray with tea. She'd been quiet since the rescue 3 days ago, cooking, moving through the compound like a ghost. Min-jun watched her set down the cups, noting the slight tremor in her hands. Leave us, he told Jae-ho. The older man hesitated, glancing between them, then nodded and left. Min-jun waited until the door closed before speaking. You haven't slept. Neither have you. Amara poured the tea with practiced precision. Mrs. Kwon says you've been in meetings for 48 hours straight. The Kim family needs to be dealt with permanently. By killing more people? He looked at her sharply. You'd prefer I let them come for you again? I'd prefer you didn't have to become more of a monster to keep me safe. She met his eyes. Every person you kill, every line you cross, it takes a piece of you. I see it happening. I've been crossing lines since I was 8 years old. He stood, moving around the desk. What's a few more? The difference between surviving and living. Min-jun stopped in front of her, close enough to touch but maintaining distance. The warehouse had changed something between them, not broken it, but bent it into a new shape they were both still learning to navigate. I killed 15 men for you, he said quietly. I'd kill 1,000 more without hesitation. Does that frighten you?
No.
She reached up, her fingers brushing his jaw. What frightens me is that you think violence is the only language you speak. He caught her wrist gently. It's the only language they understand. Then teach them a new one. Before he could respond, the office door burst open. A young guard stumbled in, bleeding from his shoulder, his face pale with panic. Boss, they're here. Kim reinforcements. 50 men, maybe more. They've breached the south gate. Alarms shrieked through the compound. Min-jun grabbed his weapon from the desk drawer, his expression shifting to cold calculation. "Get Amara to the safe room," he ordered the guard. "I'm not hiding," Amara said. "This isn't negotiable." "Neither am I." Gunfire erupted outside, close, too close. Windows shattered in the hallway. Men shouted commands. The compound had become a war zone in seconds. Min-jun grabbed Amara's arm, pulling her toward the hidden panel behind his bookshelf. "You want to help? Stay alive. That's all I need from you. And what about you?" He pressed his palm against the scanner. The panel slid open, revealing a reinforced steel door. "I'm doing what I do best. Dying." The word hit him like a physical blow. He turned, and for a moment, the mask slipped. She saw fear in his eyes, not for himself, but for her. "If I die today," he said, his voice rough, "promise me you'll run. Take the money in the safe, the passports, everything, and don't look back." "I'm not promising that, Amara. You don't get to make me care about you, and then ask me to abandon you." She grabbed his shirt, pulling him closer. "We survive this together, or not at all." An explosion rocked the building. Plaster rained from the ceiling. Min-jun cursed under his breath, then made a decision. "Stay behind me. Don't separate. And if I tell you to run, you run." He pulled a smaller gun from his ankle holster and pressed it into her hands. "Safety's off. Point and shoot." They emerged into chaos. The compound's main hall was a battlefield, Min-jun's men exchanging fire with Kim invaders, bodies sprawled across marble floors, blood mixing with broken glass. Jae-ho appeared through the smoke, his face streaked with soot. "They're trying to surround the building. We need to push them back before." A bullet caught him in the chest. He dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Min-jun was moving before Jae-ho hit the ground, returning fire with lethal precision. 3 Kim soldiers fell, then 4. His movements were fluid, economical, the result of decades of survival. Amara knelt beside Jae-ho. His vest had caught the bullet, but he was wheezing, possibly broken ribs. She grabbed his arm, helping him behind cover. "Stupid girl," Jae-ho gasped. "Should have run when you had the chance. Shut up and keep breathing." Min-jun provided covering fire while his men regrouped. The tide was turning, but slowly. Too slowly. More Kim reinforcements poured through the breached gate. "We can't hold this position," Min-jun shouted over the gunfire. "Fall back to the east wing. Bottleneck them in the hallways." His men retreated in organized chaos, dragging wounded comrades. Amara helped Jae-ho move, the older man's weight heavy against her shoulder. Min-jun stayed at the rear, his gun never stopping. They made it to the east wing before the next wave hit. The hallways became a killing field. Kim's soldiers advanced, but the narrow space limited their numbers. Min-jun's men had the advantage now, familiar territory, strategic positions. But it was still a bloodbath. Amara pressed herself against the wall, the gun heavy in her hands. A Kim soldier rounded the corner, weapon raised. She fired without thinking. The recoil jarred her arms. The soldier stumbled, grabbing his leg, and one of Min-jun's men finished him. Amara's hands were shaking violently now, the reality of what she'd done crashing over her. Min-jun appeared beside her, checking her for injuries. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, unable to speak. "Good." He reloaded his weapon. "Stay here. I'm ending this." "What are you?" But he was already moving, advancing toward the main hall alone. "Suicidal. Impossible. Completely in character." "Jae-ho," Amara said urgently. "He's going to get himself killed." The older man coughed, wincing. "That's what he does. Makes grand gestures. Thinks he's immortal." He grabbed her wrist. "Don't follow him. It's what he wants, to protect you by dying first." Amara pulled free and ran after Min-jun. She found him in the main hall, standing in the center like a statue, surrounded by bodies. The remaining Kim soldiers had him in a semicircle, weapons trained. At least 20 guns pointed at one man. The Kim commander, a scarred veteran with silver at his temples, stepped forward. Min-jun, you've lost. Surrender, and we'll make it quick. I don't surrender. Min-jun's voice was calm, almost bored. And you've miscalculated. How so? You brought 50 men. I only needed one. The commander frowned. Then the lights went out. In the darkness, Min-jun was a phantom. Gunfire erupted, but he was never where the bullets went. Amara heard bodies falling, heard the wet sounds of combat, heard the commander screaming orders that no one could follow. When the emergency lights flickered on, Min-jun stood over the commander, gun pressed to the man's forehead. Tell your bosses, Min-jun said, his voice carrying through the silent hall, that the next family who touches her dies. Every member, every associate, every distant cousin. I will burn your entire lineage to ash. The commander's face was white. You're insane.
No.
I'm in love. Min-jun pulled the trigger. The words echoed louder than the gunshot. The compound took 3 days to clean. Bodies removed. Blood scrubbed. Windows replaced. The physical damage was manageable. The political aftermath was nuclear. Word spread through the criminal underworld. Min-jun had massacred the Kim family's best soldiers. For a woman, the cold boss, the untouchable lord, had declared war over a chef. Some families sent peace offerings. Others went silent, waiting to see who would be next. The balance of power had shifted, and everyone knew it. Amara found Min-jun in his office late one night, staring at the city lights through the newly replaced windows. He hadn't changed out of his blood-stained shirt. You said you loved me, she said from the doorway. He didn't turn around. I said I was in love with you. There's a difference. What difference? One is a feeling. The other is a choice. He finally looked at her, and his expression was unguarded. Vulnerable. I've felt many things. This is the first time I've chosen to act on them. She crossed the room slowly. Was it worth it? All the death. Every body. Every bullet. Every burned bridge. He reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. The only thing I regret is that you had to see it. I'm not fragile, Min-jun. I know. That's what terrifies me. He pulled her closer, his free hand cupping her face. You're strong enough to survive my world. But I don't want you to have to. Then change the world. He laughed, a short, bitter sound. It doesn't work that way. It does if you're brave enough. I just killed 30 people. Bravery isn't my problem. Yes, it is. She pressed her palm against his chest, feeling his heartbeat. You're brave enough to fight. But are you brave enough to build something that doesn't require blood? The question hung between them, heavy with possibility and fear. I don't know how, he admitted quietly. Then we'll learn together. Min-jun kissed her then, not with the desperation of their first kiss, but with something deeper. Something that felt like promise. When they pulled apart, his forehead rested against hers. The families will keep coming, he said. This won't be the last attack. I know. And I can't promise I won't kill to protect you. I know that too. Then why stay? She smiled. Because someone needs to teach you that food without warmth is poison. And life without love is death. 3 weeks later, Min-jun called a meeting. Every major family head in the region received an invitation, not a request, a summons. Those who ignored it found their operations mysteriously disrupted. Those who attended came armed and wary. The meeting was held in a renovated hotel ballroom. Neutral territory. Public enough to discourage open warfare. Amara prepared the meal herself, a fusion of Korean and West African cuisine that represented something new, something that honored both worlds without erasing either. The family head sat at a massive round table, eyeing each other like wolves in a cage. Min-jun sat at the head, Jae-ho beside him, his ribs still taped but healing. Amara served the food personally, and the room went silent when Min-jun took her hand. Gentlemen, Min-jun began, his voice carrying authority. For 20 years, I've operated under one principle. Trust no one. It kept me alive. It kept me powerful. But it also kept me alone. The room shifted uncomfortably. Recent events have forced me to reconsider. He looked at Amara. This woman touched me when everyone else feared to. She healed me, when my own men wanted me to bleed. She stayed when wisdom dictated running. He stood, pulling Amara up with him. She is mine. And I am hers. Anyone who questions this arrangement will answer to me personally. Park, the silver-haired head who'd attended the earlier dinner, leaned forward. You're announcing a weakness to your enemies. I'm announcing a line not to cross. Min-jun's eyes swept the room. The old rules died in the warehouse. These are the new terms. We can compete, we can negotiate, we can even fight. But families are off limits. Partners are sacred. The moment you target someone's loved ones, you invite annihilation. And if we refuse these terms? Asked a younger boss, defiant. Min-jun smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression Amara had ever seen on him. Then I'll remind you why everyone fears the cold boss. Except this time, I'll have something worth protecting. Which means I'll be far more dangerous than before. The implicit threat settled over the room like snow. One by one, the family heads nodded. Some reluctant, some calculating, but all agreeing. Because they'd seen what Min-jun did to the Kim family. And none of them wanted to be next. That night, Amara and Min-jun stood in the compound's kitchen, her domain, the place where everything had started. She was preparing late-night kimchi fried rice, and he was watching her work, a ghost of a smile on his lips. You're staring, she said without looking up. I'm appreciating. There's a difference. One is observation. The other is admiration. He moved behind her, his arms wrapping around her waist. I never thought I'd feel safe in a kitchen again. And now. Now it's the only place I want to be. She turned in his arms, her hands resting on his chest. Still testing me? Every day for the rest of my life. She kissed him, soft and sweet, tasting like promise. When they pulled apart, his phone buzzed. He checked it, and his expression darkened slightly. What is it? She asked. Leaf family is making moves in the south. Nothing urgent, but it needs addressing. How will you handle it? He considered for a moment. Negotiation first. Violence only, if necessary. Look at you. Learning new languages. Only because you're a persistent teacher. He kissed her forehead. Come with me tomorrow. To the meeting.
Why?
Because I'm done hiding what I care about. Because you make me better. He pulled her closer. Because I love you. The words weren't flowery.
They weren't romantic.
They were simple and true, delivered like a confession and a promise combined. I love you too, Amara whispered. Even though you're still terrible at eating my food without commenting. I comment with silence. It's more meaningful. It's more frustrating. He laughed, actual laughter, warm and genuine. The sound filled the kitchen, chasing away ghosts. Outside, dawn was breaking over Seoul. The compound was quiet, healing, preparing for whatever came next. Inside, the untouchable Mafia lord held the woman who dared to touch him, and for the first time in 20 years, he felt something other than rage. He felt alive. And he felt ready. Not for death, but for life. Messy, dangerous, beautiful life. With her beside him, teaching him languages his mother had tried to poison, his father had died without speaking, and he'd spent decades refusing to learn. The language of trust. The language of love. The language of a man who'd been cold so long. He'd forgotten what warmth felt like, until a bold chef from another world had grabbed his wrist and refused to let go.